Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, as of recording this right this minute, I haven't actually finished the movie. I have like 10 minutes left. I'd normally wait until I had actually finished it, but I have like 10 to 15, maybe even less than that minutes before I have to go eat, and I didn't want to like be in the middle of a thought or whatever and then have to go and remember where I left off. So this movie is a sequel from I think like the 80s to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I recorded a review for that and watched it like a couple of hours ago, and I'm glad I watched these like the same day but hours apart, so that way it's enough time where I still remember the faces of like the actors from the previous movie because they play different roles in this one, but also that I wouldn't compare the two, because this movie, honestly, it's actually really fun. I'm so glad I gave it another chance. The soundtrack's amazing, but it's not okay. It's not good as a sequel to Rocky Horror in a sense. Like, it doesn't have the same, like, it's not as really like as sexual or anything. It's like way more tame in general. It's still just as weird, and it is also like pretty funny. I feel like it's just not as iconic, and I don't mean legacy wise, but like as you're watching it and stuff. Like, I could understand why the first time I watched it I just wasn't really impressed, because Rocky Horror set my standards like so high. But if you view this as something separate, even as I had mentioned in my Rocky Horror video, as like a alternate universe type thing where Brad and Janet didn't get the flat and then continued with their lives in Denton. But I guess this does thematically also work as a sequel, because it's like them, you could view it as them dealing with like their traumatic experiences and stuff in the first movie and how they grow from that, because this one takes place where they've been married for a couple years instead of just being engaged or whatever, but their relationship hasn't been going great. And what's interesting with this one is Janet is actually the main character. Like, Brad is sort of important, like he's like important kind of like behind the scenes of things, but the real main character is Janet, so it feels kind of weird going into this and they're actually separated for most of the movie. This one, they're also played by different actors as well. I was at first kind of a little mad and disappointed about that, but I ended up getting used to it. Like, the actors for this one still kind of dress the same, similar-ish, where you could look at them and be like, okay, it's supposed to be these characters or whatever. I'm glad they got people who can sing. I feel a little bad saying that because I was saying about like what's her name, Sarah Sarandon, I think, who plays Janet in the first one, about how I really liked her voice, and I do, and I thought she sang well, but like here, oh man, comparing the difference, they really did make sure like everyone can sing with this one, and that's good. I think Jessica Harper's the name of the actress who plays Janet in this one. Her voice is so good, and she's also really pretty. I didn't recognize her by name, but then once she popped up in the movie, I recognized her immediately, because I just watched another movie she's in called Phantom of the Paradise literally like last month, and that one kind of also has a similar vibe of sort of being about like stardom and stuff. She plays like a different character there though, but I'm glad to see her in another 80s movie. I think she sings great. I liked a lot of the songs she had in Phantom of Paradise, and she has some really good ones here too. I think she does a good job playing Janet as well, because the thing is, like, the characters are named Brad and Janet, and they're like implied to be the same, but they act very differently. Like, Janet in this, like I found Janet as a character in Rocky Horror kind of annoying. Like, she was always fainting and scared of things, and was kind of a bit of a hypocrite, where she sort of becomes like a bit of a slut, honestly, in the first movie, and then would like judge Brad for also sleeping with Frankenfurter, even though she did literally the exact same thing, and she just came off as like very judgy and stuff, and it wasn't like fun to watch her like as a character, I guess. But then in this one, she's a lot more like mature and grounded, and she has her own kind of storyline here, where it's that her and Brad, they end up at the Denton. The town has turned into this like TV obsessed place. Like, the whole movie takes place on some kind of like TV set thing or whatever. I can't think of what the word is right now, and I know I'm speaking very fast. I'm like trying to get out as much of this as I can before I have to go eat. And it's ruled by this guy. I think his last name's literally just like Flavors or something. Oh, I gotta go. Okay, I'm back. I was gone for like a couple more hours than I expected. I ended up exercising for an hour and a half straight and then eating, but I know I was describing the plot. So yeah, it's ruled the TV station or whatever by this guy, I think named Farley Flavors is his full name. I had to go back through my notes. And anyway, Janet ends up having like a show about her, and her parents apparently are also characters, and she ends up becoming a star and kind of consumed by fame. And then meanwhile, Brad is taken into some kind of hospital show, is supposed to be the premise, but in reality he literally has to sit in like a wheelchair gagged in like this birdcage thing for the entire movie. And I was kind of disappointed by that until I got closer to the end. I still haven't gone back to the ending yet to see what it actually is. I'm gonna read through all my notes and stuff first up until that point, because he doesn't really get anything to do, which also means he doesn't really get that many musical numbers. I think he gets like 1 or 2, and Janet gets like 3. So yeah, she's pretty much the main character, so it's kind of less like Brad and Janet and what they're up to after Rocky Horror, and more just Janet and the nature of TV being like a drug is the main theme of this movie, which I find really interesting, because the whole town never stops watching, and they even kind of, I don't know if I could even say parody different types of TV shows and stuff. It's more of just they have them there. Like there's a cereal commercial at one point, I think for some kind of Kellogg's type brand. There's a part where Janet has a musical number, but it's in the style of like one of those big 80s like MTV music videos. There's a hospital show which has some really cool characters. Oh no, I can talk about that now. So Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn, I think her name is, are 2 of the actors from Rocky Horror that end up coming back for this movie, which I thought was really cool, because like in Rocky Horror, where they're playing Riff Raff and Magenta, they're both like very memorable characters and such, being Frankenfurter's assistants, but I feel like they're not really like the draw to the movie. The focus is more on like, you know, Frank and Rocky and Brad and Janet and Magenta and Riff Raff are kind of just sort of there, and then kind of only really become important towards the end. I mean, they're the ones that set off like the dogs attacking Rocky and like little things behind the scene, and they pop up and stuff, but they're kind of just like there. But they're fun characters. But here I'm glad these 2 actors get to play characters that sort of have a similar role of kind of controlling things behind the scenes, but they're kind of really like the main antagonist. Like there is the Flavors guy, but he doesn't really have much dialogue or anything. Like you see him throughout the movie, he sits behind this giant heart-shaped logo screen thing and pretty much is just like obsessed with Janet, and that's kind of it. You learn more about his character towards the end, but yeah, it's really just this doctor and nurse character. I think the doctor's name is Cosmo. I don't remember what the nurse's name, but I'm gonna call them the doctor and yeah, I'm pretty sure one of them is a nurse. So I remember, but their characters are interesting where, you know, they're not in the costumes and wacky hairstyles and stuff of like their Rocky Horror counterparts. I mean, they're playing different characters, but it is kind of weird. I almost didn't recognize them at first until they would speak or sing, because their characters just look so normal. Like Richard O'Brien's character is just this bald guy with these weird glasses, which I find kind of interesting, because like Riff Raff was such a weird looking Igor type character, but I remember his eyes, like the way he would stare at Brad and Janet, looked kind of like eyes staring into your soul kind of a vibe. But then with his character in Shock Treatment, he has these really weird glasses. They kind of remind me of cartoons where a character's eyes look like 50 billion more times the size that they actually are because of the glasses, so you can't really like see his eyes properly. It actually makes him look like less creepy. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure now that I'm looking at the poster and this the image I have on the screen, that's him. That's what he looks like. That is the exact effect with his glasses. I have mixed feelings on this specific poster, by the way. The red lighting and the freaking smile with his mouth make him look way more scary and intimidating than he actually is. I guess he's like technically the main villain of this movie. I don't know why this poster is like so aggressively bright red. What the hell? Because I mean, red is the color of the giant heart logo for the town and for the TV station and stuff, but it's not like I didn't feel like it was a super prominent color. Like there's this one song where Janet's singing in this hallway and it's like glows bright red, and red kind of does pop up a bit more towards the end, but I didn't think the only color was like red in this movie. Yeah. But anyway, his character, and then Patricia Quinn's character, I mean, her hair and stuff still looks the same. It's weird seeing her in like normal clothes though, and not the maid outfit. I don't know if their characters are supposed to technically be their Rocky Horror counterparts, just under a different name, because they mention at one point, I don't know if it was just supposed to be a literal thing about their characters, that they're siblings and they are romantic again, so it's more incest. Like there's the start of this song that's I think called Lullaby or something, and I only know that because I think I read that somewhere, where they're singing like about like wishing goodnight and whatever, and their characters are like in bed together or something. Hold on a second, sorry. Okay. Sorry, my uncle just texted me really quick. I have to go look up some artists, but I'll do that later. But yeah, they mentioned that they're siblings. You don't like actually see them have sex on screen or anything, but they get pretty close to it and stuff. But it's a similar vibe of like they're always together and they're kind of scheming things. Like at the beginning of the movie, what kind of kickstarts the plot, besides that Brad and Janet get invited along with the other people in Denton to like this live TV broadcasting or whatever, and then they get picked to be in the shows and stuff, and the doctor and nurse characters are trying to get Janet to sign some kind of contract that will put Brad in like a hospital treatment plan. He'll be on the hospital show, but I don't think she knows they're gonna like literally imprison him the rest of the movie. And she never actually signs the contract, which turns out to be plot important at the end, but they're like trying to get her to sign this contract, and then she ends up on some like reality TV show, and they spend the movie like making sure that Brad doesn't get out of his cage and gagging him and whatever, and trying to, every time Janet inquires about Brad, they're like, no, he's fine, don't worry about him, you need to worry about the show that you're on. And they're kind of like her assistants, sort of, where they help her with things. The doctor character has this whole song about making her a little black dress, and then from there Janet has like a complete personality change. So they help her with things with that, but they're also like scheming against Brad and Janet, where they're trying to keep them separated, trying to get Janet to sign this contract, and they also end up drugging her a couple of times, which I think it was like sleep pills or something. They end up slipping pills into her drink and literally just in her mouth at one point. And I don't think she knows or cares what the pills do. I mean, eventually she starts kind of treating them badly, where she thinks she's like a big star and she's like, oh, I don't need you guys anymore, or whatever. But they're like totally scheming against her the whole movie. But they're kind of, it's weird. Like with their characters in Rocky Horror, they're more like eccentric and they have these fun costumes and stuff. And then in this movie, it's like their characters look so normal. They're literally like in doctor's smocks pretty much the whole movie. But they're somehow more fun, I think, just because they get more musical numbers and stuff, these two, and I think because they're pretty much the central antagonists acting under this like TV executive guy, they have kind of more reins of causing more mischief and more things they can do in the plot. So that's pretty cool. That's like a nice that's like part of the reason I actually wanted to watch this the same like day or so that I watched Rocky Horror, so I can at least remember their faces and be like, oh yeah, these two from the movie. And the criminologist guy from Rocky Horror is also in this. His character, I don't remember if his character in Rocky Horror was like officially given a name, probably, but here his character's name is Oliver, and he is part of like a B plot to this movie actually, where he's like this older guy. I don't think he's like a criminologist this time. I don't remember what his job is. And he's friends / kind of always flirting around with this woman that's a bit younger than him named Betty, I think. And they kind of just investigate things on the set, and they realize that like Janet's in trouble and they try to like save her. But they kind of basically spend the movie making commentary about things that are happening, kind of like the criminologist does, but like they get like a bit more screen time. But yeah, they just comment on her storyline. They get kind of more involved at the end of, I think they're the ones that end up actually freeing Brad. They end up finding out some like super plot important information that ties Brad and the villain together, which I was like just getting into when I originally had paused watching the movie to like, you know, do this and then go eat or whatever. There's subplots like, okay, like by the time at the end they're like very important characters and stuff, and they kind of keep the ball rolling, but throughout the movie I felt like their stuff was kind of skippable. You see like a little bit of things with like Brad doesn't really do much, a couple of things with like Janet's parents. There's also this like little fan club of these, I think like teenagers or young adults or something, that pop up like I think in like 2 scenes to talk to Janet and stuff. I don't think they're like super relevant though. That's the thing with this one, is like there's way more just people in general in this movie. Like with Rocky Horror, it's like, yeah, you have the Transylvanian audience or whatever that show up for the party, but they're not in the movie very long. There's maybe only at least like 8 to 10 characters throughout Rocky Horror, and I feel like that fits because they all get enough like screen time and stuff, and you're kind of just stuck with this like lovable group and whatever. And then this movie, it's like you have Brad and Janet, but mostly just Janet. You have Janet's parents, you have Oliver and Betty, you have the doctor and nurse people. There's also like these other people that work just on the in-universe show or something. Like there's one of them that's always dressed like a policeman, and they're like always in costume, and you see them kind of offset just doing stuff or talking about things or whatever. There's always just people around, and then there's the entire TV audience that's there that doesn't really do much. They kind of feel like they're almost hypnotized or something, but they end up becoming like obsessed with Janet, and she becomes this big star. So it's like a lot of people, but not a lot of them are important, if that makes sense. It's like a very different vibe from like the more closed off, smaller cast, like spooky haunted house vibe of Rocky Horror. In terms of the songs, they're all pretty great. I don't know if I'm like technically done. I'm assuming with the point of the movie I'm at, there's probably at least like 1 or 2 more songs, and it was a really weird point to pause. I feel like I have to go back because I was in the middle of a song for like the villain and Brad actually, but let me backtrack a bit. I wasn't like super into the movie or the songs at the like very beginning. Like there's this title song about like Denton and Denton TV and how Denton is such like a normal town, whatever, and the way it's shot I think is really cool, where there's these giant like letters or whatever that I think spell out Denton, and it's like these close-ups of the citizens or whatever, and they're all doing things. Like there's this woman sewing and this guy trimming like a fake hedge or whatever, and they're all talking about how nice the town is and whatever, and that one's okay. I feel like that was a good introduction. It kind of reminds me of the beginning of Rocky Horror, where it's just like these normal, like very kind of conservative people and whatever. They're all like goody two-shoes and stuff. Kind of like a nice little intro before things kind of verge off into insanity, you know. But that one's okay. And then the audience, I think, has some kind of song too. I don't remember if it's the same song. It's whatever. I think only really until like halfway into the movie I like actually started noting down the songs and such, of like ones that I really 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 liked. Let's see, as I mentioned, before that there's the song, I think it's called Lullaby, but I'm not like 100% positive on that, where it's like Janet and she's like been separated from Brad at this point, and it's her and a bunch of the other characters, and the camera's like facing towards their bedroom windows, and they're singing like about it's time to go to bed and whatever. It's not really set up like a lullaby. There's like this kind of sad guitar though. I could see it working kind of like a lullaby though, or like a kind of wind down song. I thought that one was nice, and I like that with the way the windows are lit up, it kind of looks like we're watching them through a TV. I feel like that was probably intentional with like it kind of just feels like we're watching footage in a sense throughout this movie. Like there's a lot of time where there's like this CRT TV kind of effect on the screen when we're watching stuff that's supposed to be like what would be on a person's in-universe like TV. And I thought that was really cool to remind us like, yeah, they're all kind of on like a TV show or whatever. Or just seeing a lot of things that are like on the set and off the set. There's a lot of like behind the scenes setting stuff too, like these random white hallways, the room Brad's stuck in, or like Janet's dressing room and things like that. It just makes the whole building feel very alive. But there's part like in the middle where there's like 3 songs in a row that were just so good. Honestly, I kept kind of pausing the movie to take notes. There's one that's about a little black dress where the doctor guy ends up making Janet this black dress. And that one has... That song so far had been the one that felt the most like something that would have been out of Rocky Horror. It has this fun, like, time warp vibe with, like, the melody of it and everything. I feel like with Rocky Horror, not every song, you know, like we have the ballad that Frank sings toward the end about going home as an example, but like a lot of the songs are very like high energy and fun, and whatever kind of more sound like a bit kind of upbeat or whatever. I guess I should say they seem very lively for the most part. And the songs here are like similar instruments and stuff. Like the instruments and the guitars especially sound like really similar to Rocky Horror as a whole. These songs though are like a lot less energetic. They feel, probably because of the guitar, very like 50s and stuff. It makes me think of like 50s music the way you would associate like Grease with the 50s. I guess a little bit of that vibe of like the kind of like, I don't know if I want to say like rockabilly or like 50s rock and roll kind of vibe. And I just think that's so cool. Like it's a style that's for both movies, but I feel like I noticed it more with this one because the songs are kind of more subdued. Because I think the one about the black dress was really the only one so far I felt like kind of reminded me the most of Rocky Horror. And then there's a song afterwards that Janet performs, where it's interesting. Once she ends up getting the black dress, she stops worrying about Brad, and she starts becoming obsessed with the idea of being a star. She just sort of becomes a diva and stuff, to the point where she's eventually like, can you guys stop talking about Brad? I need to go see my people and whatever. And she ends up kind of changing her tune a little bit towards the end, getting a bit of a reality check. But it's just kind of interesting that that's like something you can very much notice immediately after a certain song. But then she has this like MTV music video type thing like immediately after she gets the black dress, and that was really cool. It's sung really well. I don't know the title of that one. And then there's like the song about like saying goodnight. So like 3 bangers back to back is what I wrote in my notes. And then there's the title song, Shock Treatment, and that one's also good. That one feels kind of the most 50s, and it's just fun. I like how with the lyrics and stuff, and with just the term shock treatment, because I never really understood what the title meant. I remembered like nothing from this movie, I'll be honest, from my first watch like several years ago. It could refer to shock treatment, like the stuff they would give you in like an old mental hospital or something, but I think it's also kind of referring to like TV itself, especially because throughout the song it's literally a group of characters circling around Brad's cage, but they're not completely. No, I think they are kind of singing to Brad. And as it's happening, there's like these pauses where Janet and a couple of the other characters will like pose against a wall and a camera will take a picture, and it'll be like a flash of light on screen, like shock treatment or whatever. And that made me think of like, oh, kind of like a TV. Because like I said, this theme of like TV and as a whole, but also like fame and stardom through Janet's character, of being kind of like a drug. Like the town of Denton is like hooked on it and stuff. They can't get enough of Janet. They like literally sleep at the like TV studio or whatever, and shock treatment being like all you need is kind of like the TV, you know? I think that's pretty interesting. It makes me feel like this movie was kind of ahead of its time, with how, like, even though it's made in the 80s, but like these themes about like commercialism and TV and like the popularity and how we view celebrities or even like influencers now on such like high of a pedestal and whatever, I think is still really relevant to this day. And I was kind of just thinking about that as I was watching this movie. The little black dress, I mentioned about it. I think it's a really cool outfit, honestly. Like, I know that's like a very classic term of like the little black dress or whatever. I think Janet's is cool. It has this like slit for one of the legs, and she has this like pink eyeshadow that I feel like normally would look kind of weird, but like with the outfit and the actress, she like pulls it off. And then she has this black hat that has this like really wide brim and everything. Let me see here. Yeah, but the movie's on YouTube, so I'm literally just going back with my mouse to like get a better look at it, honestly. But yeah, and she has, it's like very, this kind of sparkly-ish sort of hat. She has these, I think, like black gloves or something. But yeah, it looks very iconic. The hat, though, it kind of reminds me of like Lydia Deetz' big black hat from Beetlejuice. I feel like this movie almost reminds me a little bit of Beetlejuice. I don't know if it's just like the weirdness of it or whatever. It's not like as wacky or like creepy or anything, but what else? But that performance I mentioned with Janet where she sings a song in her black dress and it's like a music video, I thought that was also interesting because it's a song where she kind of just lets loose and finally allows herself to be herself and kind of discover more of who she is. I think it's interesting to have that in this movie, but then also that's one of the things with Rocky Horror where her and Brad, you know, they're like devoted to each other at the beginning, and then throughout the movie they become more comfortable with their sexuality and stuff and are kind of less dependent on each other. But then here Janet's kind of going through that, or not really with her sexuality. This isn't like a super sexual movie, actually. Which feels weird for it being, you know, a sequel to Rocky Horror. But it's like a song about her like becoming her, but also kind of the start of like her villain arc of becoming like this big diva and everything and having a different personality change. It's almost like in a different context of like, you know, Brad is sitting there in like the cell, he's waiting for you to come get him out, because she also kind of agrees partially to being on the show and getting the outfit and trying to like have this like sexy music video type performance or whatever as like a way to earn back Brad. But then once it's over, she doesn't really care about him anymore and gets obsessed with stardom. So it's like he's the reason she's like kind of doing stuff with the plot in the first place of like trying to get his attention and whatever, but it kind of just goes badly for her, and she doesn't end up being the one that frees him anyway. I don't know if by the end if they're gonna like save their marriage or not, because I was the whole thing with this movie is like they're trying to save their marriage. I feel bad for Brad. Like, even Janet's parents don't like him, but then later on, because the reason they put him in like solitary confinement in the first place is that everyone believes that Brad is too emotional or something. And later on, her parents, once Janet's kind of given up on Brad, her parents are the ones that are telling the doctors like, hey, should we let him go? I don't think he should be tied up or whatever. What else? I have more to say about that in a minute. The doctor and nurse character getting duets is pretty cool. Kind of makes me wish Riff Raff and Magenta had some kind of like weird duet or whatever. In Rocky Horror, with my Rocky Horror video, I said like, yeah, I'm gonna just talk about that movie. I'm not gonna compare it to Shock Treatment. And I know throughout this, I've been just comparing the two of them this whole time, but like I can't help it. This is like the sequel, and I'm not trying to compare it in a bad way. I just think it's interesting where you can kind of compare the characters a little bit, even though they're like completely different movies and everything. I spotted the American Gothic painting. I didn't notice that in my first viewing of this, but there's this costume room where there's this kind of catchy song, I kind of don't completely remember it right now, of these helpers on the medical show or whatever. They're all dressed in like nurse costumes or something in this costume room, and the American Gothic painting is just in the background on a wall or something. There's like a good shot of it on the camera. I wondered if that was just like a fun little reference to Rocky Horror. I'm assuming so, I think with finishing this movie, I'm just curious if like the doctor and nurse character are going to secretly be revealed to be like Riff Raff and Magenta or something, to like come back to Earth, kind of spy on humans or whatever. And then Janet's forced to take all these pills. And then we learn some stuff about Brad and the villain. It kind of starts the climax. And then from there, I don't really know what happens. But we see this newspaper article, because they mention towards the beginning of the movie when Janet's parents are making fun of Brad, they're like, oh, it's a good thing he's an orphan so his parents don't see him like this or whatever. Which feels kind of fucked up to say. But we see a newspaper article about these twin orphans that are split up or something after their parents die. One of them is Brad, and the other one is I guess technically the villain, Farley Flavors. So Oliver and Betty end up being the ones to find that out, and they end up being the ones to free Brad, and it's not like it's a secret from Brad or anything. He knows. And then we get this really cool confrontation duet thing where Brad's free now, and the Farley Flavors guy, he is like in the main recording room in front of the TV audience or whatever, and he's gonna give some kind of speech or whatever. Like I said, I need to like go back to that part. I was kind of not as paying attention to what was kind of going on, but Janet's there, and Janet kind of looks a little weirded out or something. Like, I just remember her eyes kind of looking a little dead. I think at that point she like kind of remembers more about Brad and wanting to like save him. But anyway, the twins, they have this song where they confront each other, where they're singing how lame the other person is, and it's this duet in this like weird white hallway. There's one part of it where they're just sitting at a table across from each other, but it's like one of those really long tables. It reminds me of one of the scenes in Nier Automata, actually. Some of the lines are kind of funny, but also just like, damn, okay. Like literally, I think Brad's the one that says something of like, the best thing you can do is die. And there's this other line, I don't remember which the character says it, where it's, you lost your baby when you lost your balls. I'm like, what? I think baby in that context was referring to like your sweetheart or whatever, but that's such a weird line. But it was a good song. I actually did not get to finish it because that's when I was recording this, and then I had to like leave or whatever. But it was, whatever that song is, it's a good song. It's easily my favorite so far. It kind of makes Brad being stuck in the cage for like literally the entire movie worth it, honestly. because he's stuck in there and he's helpless, and it's like the villain is won, but then as soon as Brad gets out, he's like, hey, you suck or whatever, and they start arguing. But yeah, I have like 5 or 10 minutes left of the movie, so at this point I'm out of notes. I'm gonna go finish it, and then we can finish off this video. So I'll be back. Alright, I just finished the movie. I think I can finish this video and my notes. So I went back a bit because, I'll be honest, even going a bit backwards in the movie and then watched until the end, it was like a lot of things were just suddenly happening, and I kind of don't really understand what the heck was going on with the plot anymore. But anyway, there's a song I forgot about where there's this, like, I thought it was like a teen idol guy, and I realized they mentioned the name Oscar Joel and the Bits, and it's the group of people, the fans of hers that Janet had met earlier in the movie, because they're a band and she talks to them about it, and they perform a song called Breaking Out, which is referred to in the movie as suburban garage, as like a genre, which I thought was interesting. It's like this 50s rock song. I thought it sounded pretty good, actually. Like, I could see why I originally forgot about it, though. It's kind of not really like the main focus, like it's playing, but there's like other things that are happening. And then I was wondering, because I mentioned, like, Janet looks kind of, like, weirded out to see Brad or whatever. It's because she finally meets the Farley flavor guy or whatever. And, of course, she's freaked out because he's twins with Brad. She meets someone that's the same face. Like, she even sees him and she just goes, like, Brad? Like, what are you doing here? And I'm stupid. I didn't realize until I got to the credits that the Farley guy and Brad are, because they're supposed to be twins, are literally played by the same actor. It's just that one of them has glasses and the other doesn't, and they have different outfits, and that's pretty much it. But like in my mind, I couldn't see them as the same person. But they do a good job with that because they have like a whole song together. But they're never shown the same space on the camera. The camera's always flashing between them. And I thought it was just supposed to be because they're like arguing with each other. But no, it's probably because they're the same person. So it's not like they can be on screen at the same time. And the reason that the flavor guy is obsessed with Janet, the movie says, is because she's everything he was denied or whatever. So he has beef with his brother, and I listened to the song again. It's still good, still my favorite. It gets a bit too wordy at times, like too many words at once, where it's like, okay, calm down, bro. I still laughed at the ball line again, the one that was like something of like, oh, if you don't have your baby because you don't have the balls. Just the way every syllable gets enunciated with that, I think made it funny. And the fact that like one of the main lines and like the repeating line at the end of the song is literally the best thing you can ever do is die is still kind of crazy to me. And then that turns out to be a fantasy sequence anyway, which I didn't even really like notice, because the song ends and then it's back to whatever's going on in the main plot. And then it kind of gets really fast from there, where I wasn't really sure why things were happening. So there's this song that plays called Denton USA, and I think it was from the beginning of the movie. I can't remember, but it's good. It's catchy. It's like a fun way to end the movie, but there's like stuff that's happening while it's going on. It's like one of those endings where like everyone just sings and dances, but it's not really like a dance party ending. Almost a dance party ending, I guess. It's not really like a party. It's more of like there's other people that are dancing, but not all the characters. Brad and Janet and Oliver and Betty, they all get like kicked out of the building, I think because the flavor guy doesn't want them there anymore. But I think it's for the best because, oh yeah, Betty also flips someone off during that point. That was kind of funny. And no one ends up caring that Janet leaves except this one woman who's like screaming hysterically about Janet being gone. And there's this guy next to her. And they're just people that are like part of the audience or whatever. And they're like, you're about to see a success story because Janet was supposed to be like Miss Mental Health or whatever. But because she gets kicked out and leaves or something, she gets replaced by this blonde woman. And the blonde woman leaves. It's like one of the staff people. And the entire audience follows. And they're given these outfits that turn out to be these like striped straitjackets, and then the entire audience gets put in like jail, but they're all singing and happy about it. I think it's supposed to represent like they're hooked on the TV stuff now, like they couldn't get out. They're like prisoners there basically, but they're like happy to do it. But yeah, then Brad and Janet and the other two, they like hang out at the empty studio for a bit. Brad and Janet do end up kissing at least, so I guess that and they end up leaving together, so I guess that confirms their marriage is fixed. I don't know, I feel weird about that because like they didn't really see each other the entire movie or anything. And then they end up together. They didn't really seem like, oh my gosh, I was so worried about you, I'm glad you're okay, or whatever. There was like none of that. They're just back together, and it's like, oh, okay. Like I kept forgetting throughout the movie, but especially at this part of like, right, they're supposed to be a couple. I know it was that they were married and they weren't doing so great or whatever, so they're not supposed to, of course, act like lovey-dovey throughout the whole movie, but I kept forgetting because, you know, Janet was the main character and Brad was kind of just there. But they end up stealing this convertible, which is supposed to be some kind of prize Janet was supposed to win. I don't even know if she won it or if they were like illegally stealing it, but they steal the convertible along with a bunch of other people and they drive out of the building and leave. So I'm assuming it's a happy ending. Presumably their marriage is fixed and they don't have to do any of the shock treatment show stuff anymore. And everyone else in Tenton is kind of screwed, but they're fine with it. So whatever. But the song at the end, it's fun, it's catchy, it's like a fun way. It's interesting compared to Rocky Horror, where depending on the version, you know, the house leaves off into outer space and Janet and Brad and no, not the criminologist guy, Dr. Scott or whatever, they're just laying there injured on the ground, or, you know, they sing the song Superheroes and it's like equally as sad or whatever. And, you know, they barely escape with their lives. A couple of people are dead. And then with this movie, they're all like happy and singing and they get to leave and everyone's fine for the I don't think anyone died in this movie. I think that's that's part of the reason I didn't feel like Rocky Horror. There wasn't really anything like too sexual. No one died. The worst thing that happened, I think, was just drugging Janet and Brad being kept in no, they do make fun of minorities at one point. I forgot about that. There's this line where they like make fun of Mexicans, which was interesting because one of the lyrics in the opening song was about being like accepting of minorities or whatever. I don't know. I kind of vaguely remember that. But yeah, that's shock treatment. It's weird. I'll be honest. I don't really know what was going in the plot sometimes. Like Rocky Horror feels pretty linear. I think also because, you know, it's like based off of like a musical and everything. So when something's already in a musical format with like an act structure and everything, and then you turn it into a movie, as long as they're sticking to that, it's kind of like easy to follow and stuff. And then with shock treatment, and you know, the songs are like pretty evenly spaced, but then with shock treatment, it's like I don't know what the hell was going on in the plot sometimes, and sometimes it was like song after song after song, which is fine. The songs are fun. You know, I'm glad that there's a good amount of them. I was kind of worried if this wasn't going to be a musical, if it was just going to be, I feel like if it wasn't a musical and it was just like a regular movie, I wouldn't have been as interested. But I think the songs, besides being mostly bangers and stuff, kind of kept my attention, everything. I'm glad that Janet gets a lot of songs. I'll watch Jessica Harper sing like anything at this point. It kind of made me want to rewatch Phantom of Paradise. I gotta see like what other musical movies and stuff she's in. That's the real thing I'm taking away from this movie. But I thought the actors did good. It was nice to see Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn again. I read a Letterboxd review for this movie I'm still thinking about that said, why do these two always play incestuous siblings? And I know that's probably also referring to Rocky Horror, but the fact it was worded like that, I'm like, is that like a recurring thing in movies that they do or something? But I like the characters they play in this and Rocky Horror being like these people that are kind of just very scheming and stuff, and it also makes this poster scary. I kind of considered them the real antagonists of this movie and not the flavor guy, because he's there, but he doesn't really like feel like have like much of a presence or anything until the end when he like his confrontation with Brad is weird too, where they sing an argument about like, oh, you're lame, no, you're lame or whatever, and Brad saying like, oh, you don't have heart anymore, so I don't want you to be part of my life, and then they leave, and that's it. Like, it's a good confrontation, but I'm just like, that's it. And I'm like, why didn't Janet have anything to say to him, you know? Like, I think she knows that he's obsessed with her or whatever. I don't know. It's like Janet was the main character and we were following along with her storyline, and then I feel like it kind of just peters off towards the end. Like what even happens? I don't know. It's like as soon as she sees Farley Flavors and remembers about Brad, her like diva personality of wanting to be a big star just kind of completely disappears. But yeah, I wouldn't be able to really recount the plot of this in like a couple of days even, but I still enjoyed it anyway. It's like just as weird ish as like Rocky Horror. I think more weird but in like a different way. The songs were good. Yeah, in terms of it being a sequel, Rocky Horror is definitely the one that I still prefer. But I think with this movie I have to not view it as a sequel, which is fine. Like if you just viewed it as like on its own or whatever, I think it's a fun time. It has good music. I could consider it part of the same universe or something, but yeah, that's about it. But I'm glad I watched it. I'm so glad I gave it another chance because I remembered, I'm not even kidding, like nothing about this movie other than it taking place on like a TV studio set or whatever. And that was literally all I remembered. So I'm glad I gave it another shot. I like paid attention this time. I sort of paid attention. I'll be honest. Like halfway through this movie, I was on Itch.io. No, before I continued with the movie, actually, I was on Itch.io, and I was, because I wanted to be in like peace and quiet watching this, and I was scrolling through and downloading games, and I got distracted, and then I ended up on a comment page for a game I played, and I was reading through the reviews, and I like paused this movie for like a significant amount of time to read that, so I didn't really watch this in like one sitting. I kind of wish I had, or I could have. I feel like it would have flowed better, especially because it's a TV setting, but you know, that's on me. That's not on the movie. But you know, then I finished it and I was fine. So yeah, fun time. I recommend it. I don't think it works as like a Halloween movie really. It kind of reminds me of this other movie I watched a while ago. I don't know if it was called TV Games or whatever. It was some movie where this guy got trapped inside of a TV. I think it was him and his wife or something, and the devil is in charge of it, and it's like this magic thing where they have to go inside of different TV shows or something. Kind of like the premise of that one like Fairly Odd Parents episode where Timmy, the Power Channels one, or the TV one with Tim and Vicky. I vaguely remember it was like a TV special or something where they go into like different channels or whatever. It's kind of that premise of that movie. That's kind of what Shock Treatment reminds me of, but I swear I cannot remember the movie of whatever the heck I'm talking about, other it being in the 80s, and it was like TV hosted by the devil. The devil was like a game show host type character. Was it Mind Games? No, I think that's something else I was gonna watch. Damn, I can't remember. That's okay. This movie reminds me of like very specific kinds of movies from like the 80s and 90s, like lower budget. I don't know, man, but it was a good time. I enjoyed it. I'm kind of losing my voice at this point, so I'll stop this here. But yeah, I recommend this one. Whether you've seen Rocky Horror or not. If you haven't seen Rocky Horror, I think that's even better because then you won't compare them or anything. But it stands on its own just fine. It's free on YouTube. I watched this like a couple years ago for the first time, so I think it's just been on there for a while. I don't know if it's on like streaming or anything. But yeah, good movie actually. All right, see you next time. Bye bye.